When you hear about promises, what comes to mind? Do you think of an agreement between friends or a legal bond that holds the power to shape futures? Well, what if I told you that one promise, made thousands of years ago, has had the power to change the entire world? God's covenant with Abraham is not just a biblical moment, but a promise that spans generations and nations, still shaping history today. It's not just about an individual man, but an agreement that was meant to bless the entire world. Stick with us as we unravel the depth of God's covenant with Abraham and discover how it connects us to a legacy that transcends time. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Story of Grace for more thought-provoking content. The promise that started it all. In Genesis 12, God called Abraham, a man with no nation, to step out into the unknown, telling him, "I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you." Imagine hearing those words. This wasn't just about Abraham receiving land or wealth. It was about him becoming a pivotal figure in a divine plan that would affect every person who has ever lived. But what exactly was this promise? What did it mean to be chosen by God to make such a monumental impact on history? The moment God spoke to Abraham, he set the course of history into motion. The covenant was a bond that would lead to the blessing of all nations, an agreement that would forever change the destiny of humankind. And through Abraham's faith, we witness the beginnings of God's grand design. God's chosen people. Israel's role in the covenant. God's covenant wasn't just a promise to Abraham, it was a promise that carried over to his descendants. But how did Israel, Abraham's descendants, fit into the picture? Israel was not chosen for its greatness or strength, but for God's love and divine purpose. Through Israel, the world would come to know God's nature and character. The nation of Israel was set apart to live out the covenant by reflecting God's holiness and becoming a light to the nations. Israel's role was clear. They were to embody the relationship between God and humanity and share that relationship with the world. But here's the twist. This promise wasn't exclusive to Israel. Israel's role was not just to keep the blessings for themselves, but to extend them to all nations. What started as a promise to Abraham and his family would become a promise that embraced the world. The deeper meaning of God's promise. When we think of God's promise to Abraham, it's easy to focus on the material blessings, the land, the descendants, the wealth. But the heart of the promise runs much deeper. God's covenant was not just about what Abraham would receive in terms of earthly things. It was about relationship. Through the covenant, God was offering Abraham and his descendants an intimate relationship with him. The promise was about God's faithfulness to be with Abraham, to guide him, and to bless him. But more importantly, this covenant pointed to something even greater. God promised that through Abraham's line, the world would be blessed, ultimately leading to the coming of Jesus Christ. This promise was not just about Abraham, it was about salvation for all nations. God's covenant was never meant to be a small, exclusive promise. It was designed to open the door for all humanity to experience the fullness of His love. Jesus, the fulfillment of the covenant. God's covenant with Abraham was always about more than just Israel or the Jewish people. The ultimate fulfillment of the covenant came through Jesus Christ, a descendant of Abraham. Jesus, the Messiah, was the key to bringing the blessings of Abraham to the entire world. His life, death, and resurrection broke down the walls between Jews and Gentiles, making salvation available to everyone. Without the covenant God made with Abraham, there would be no Jesus. And without Jesus, there would be no salvation. Jesus didn't just fulfill the covenant for Abraham's descendants, he opened the floodgates for the entire world. His life became the ultimate blessing that would bring all nations into God's family. Jesus' sacrifice on the cross was the final act that sealed the promise of salvation. So how does this affect us today? It shows us that God's promise to Abraham was not just a promise for a particular group of people, it was a promise for all of humanity, an eternal covenant. One of the most extraordinary things about God's covenant with Abraham is that it was unconditional and eternal. God didn't make this promise with any conditions attached. Even when Israel faltered, when they strayed from God's commands, God's covenant remained intact. This is the nature of God's promises. They are not bound by time or circumstance. The covenant with Abraham is not just a piece of history. It's an ongoing relationship that continues to impact the world today. As believers in Christ, we are now part of Abraham's spiritual family. We share in the blessings of the covenant, and we are called to live out those blessings in our lives. This is an exciting reality because it means that God's covenant is still active, still alive, and still guiding His people. And the promise is not limited to a single people or nation. It extends to every tribe, tongue, and nation across the globe. The legacy of Abraham, from generation to generation. The covenant God made with Abraham has reached across generations, from Abraham to Isaac, from Isaac to Jacob, and from Jacob to Jesus Christ. The blessings of the covenant have spread throughout the world. But here's the question. What does that legacy mean for us today? As descendants of Abraham by faith, we are called to carry forward the legacy of blessing. It's not enough to receive God's blessings. We are called to share them with others. This covenant is not just a historical fact. It's a living reality that continues through the generations. Just as Abraham was blessed to be a blessing, we are blessed to be a blessing. The promise God made to Abraham was never just about one person or one nation. It's about the global family of God. And that family is growing as more and more people come to faith in Christ, living out the covenant. Today, God's covenant with Abraham was not just for ancient times, it is still relevant today. As followers of Jesus, we are called to live out the blessings of Abraham's covenant in our own lives. This means being a blessing to those around us, sharing the love and hope of Christ, and making a difference in our communities. But how do we do this? It starts by recognizing that we are part of something much bigger than ourselves. We are part of a global family, bound together by the covenant God made with Abraham. And our role is to continue the work of blessing the world. Just as Abraham was chosen to be a blessing, so too are we chosen to be a blessing to others. This isn't just a call for action. It's a call for a lifestyle, a way of living that reflects God's love and grace to the world. The promise of hope and redemption. When we think about God's covenant with Abraham, it's important to remember that it is a promise of hope. It's a promise that no matter what, God will remain faithful to His word. Abraham's life is a testimony to this truth. Even when the situation seemed impossible, God made a way. And today, we can take comfort in knowing that God's promises will never fail. Even in the midst of uncertainty or hardship, we can trust that God will fulfill His word. The covenant God made with Abraham is a reminder that God's plan is bigger than our circumstances. And as we look to the future, we can hold on to the hope that His promises will come to pass. The covenant God made with Abraham is more than just a part of ancient history. It's a living, breathing promise that continues to shape our world today. Through Jesus Christ, we are all invited into the blessing of Abraham's covenant. And as we reflect on this promise, we are reminded that we are not just passive recipients of blessing. We are active participants in God's plan to bless the world. As we live out the blessings of the covenant, we become part of a global family, sharing God's love and grace with the world. So, as we look to the future, let's remember the incredible promise that started with Abraham and continues to impact our lives today. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the covenant God made with Abraham, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Story of Grace. Stay tuned for more thought-provoking videos, and remember, the best is yet to come.